Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to the Glad Trad podcast. I'm Jordan Pacheco.
And I'm Rodolfo Carlos.
Still Rodolfo Carlos. I like that.
I'm still Rodolfo Carlos.
Have you ever introduced yourself as Rudy once on our show?
You know, I probably should now that AOC is taking names.
Oh, that's right. Oh, are you?
So.
Steven Crowder said sign himself up, so I'm actually with him. It's funny, right? It's funny how we're supposed to be the fascists and the evil ones, and yet who are the people who are like, you know what we should do? We should put all the Trump supporters on the list.
It didn't take very long, you know. I mean, they think that they won so far, and
that's right. Yes,
we're celebrating.
Well, what is it? What's the date today? It's the 8th, so which is the 5 days after the election.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, there is so much tomfoolery happening, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's getting pretty wild, and there's still a lot more to come. So we'll see. I'm really impatient, so I want to have the answer yesterday.
Well, this is a problem because we all went to bed on November 3rd, and we said we're gonna wake up and it's gonna be another 4 more years of the emperor. And apparently that was so triggering to the Democratic Party that they had to cheat in order to get this happening, which I think happened because how do you get on 100% ballot dump in Wisconsin, Michigan, 138,000 votes for Biden? Oh, none for Trump, but it's just a glitch. Nevada doesn't even resume counting until Thursday or whatever. Like all this.
Not to mention the turnout also, like the turnout statistics were much higher than anything really reported ever. So I highly doubt, even with, some states had same day registration. So maybe there could be an uptick in, voter turnout, but when you're getting numbers like close to 80, these
margins are higher than 2016, and they're higher than Obama's 2008 win for Biden, which means ergo that Biden is more popular. Apparently, hold 20 cars at a rally. I went up to Denver yesterday because there's the march around Jericho's, there's a count the vote kind of thing, and I was doing some other business, and I wanted to go to the state capitol, but of course, that was the day that the election was called. So I was like, this is not probably a prudent place to be right now. With all
and Ashley and I were worried about you guys because we were thinking about, when was that? It was like it was a Trump rally that happened 3 or 4 weeks ago in Denver where the man got killed.
Yeah, there was, and what's funny is that was you're gonna love this. Jen and I had
a date there that day.
Jen and I, well, not there specifically. I wanted to go, but Jen and I had an express date day at the art museum, which is in the same I guess you'd say the same surrounding as Capitol Hill here in Denver. So that happened literally. So we were at ground zero, but we were away enough, and it was all quiet in the museum and everything.
Wow.
Otherwise, not what people need to understand about Colorado is it's kind of like how how LA is the world, but you get out of LA, you get into Bakersfield or San Diego or whatever, and you realize that people are normal. Colorado is very much like that. You have your liberal hubs of Boulder and Denver, but every place else is pretty conservative. Like here in Douglas County, where I live, just an hour outside of Denver, 45 minutes outside of Denver. I mean, it's all Trump territory. So it's like you stay away from Denver because
MAGA country.
And I feel bad because I feel like as I was driving through Denver, and I've taken a really hard look at Denver recently. It's not the same city of my childhood, and it's way more yuppie, but that's not a good thing. I don't know, it feels decayed. Like I feel like Denver used to be a real nice Western city, if you will. But driving through, I'm like, wow, I have no love for Denver like I did in my boyhood. I don't get excited looking at Ocean. Well, it used to be Ocean's Journey, now Downtown Aquarium, or Six Flags, which used to be Elitch's. Mile High Stadium is now called like the Empowerment Field or some really bad. The Pepsi Center is now the Blue Center, the Blue Stadium, or no, the Ball Center, Ball Stadium. Just
that's what it's called, the Ball Stadium.
Yeah, it's this. Things are just changing, Yeah, and I look around and Denver's kind of cool because the architecture of old Denver is these kind of nice 1900s red brick houses, if you will, But all the streets that keep going on off of like University or maybe another street, they're not the nicest kind of houses. There's a couple of real gems, but it's like Los Angeles, right? Where you have like the old LA architecture, which is really, really nice. And then everything else is just kind of starting to decay a little bit and get older. And it's just not, I don't love it. I don't have the kind of, I came back to Colorado and I love Colorado. But in terms of Denver as a city, I feel like I'm just back in LA depending on what parts I'm in. And that doesn't make me very happy. Like the people can be the same sometimes, depending on what part of town you go to. It just doesn't feel, it's not home, right? Home is the countryside for me.
One of the worst companies that I ever worked with, I was thinking about this the other day, has a small store in Denver. And I was thinking, I was thinking about it because of the election, because Colorado, it swung blue.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wow, Colorado, sometimes it goes red, sometimes it goes blue. But for the most part in the past, I think it mostly went red. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I mean, we used to be way more of a swing state. We are kind of, the last 3 elections, maybe even 4. The last 4 elections now, technically, we've swung blue. But sometimes we'd send a Republican senator or something like that. But lately, it's just changing. Yeah.
But, a lot of Californians and a lot of people from the West Coast end up going to Colorado. And I think that has contributed to not only the state turning blue, maybe it's not going to be a swing state anymore, but also to I think a lot of the decay and the culture and maybe in the cities that you're saying. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not like a city planner or anything like that. So. I mean, but a lot of people go there.
Yeah, this is a huge.
They bring their ideas,
and they bring their ideas, and this is what's happening in Texas, Nevada, Arizona, and this is the funny thing, right? Because the coast, it's for those who maybe still live in California, or those certainly who don't live in California. There is this natural dislike of Californians purely based on their ideas.
Yeah.
If you're from the proper West, right? If you're from Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, if Nebraska, Kansas, any of the things, any place really, California, it's like they come into the States because you can't afford California. It's becoming a hellhole. And then they come.
Literally, it's like I mean, without going into using bad language, it is really like an asshole here.
Yeah.
Like even in the nice areas, like some parts of Burbank too.
There used to not be a homeless thing in Burbank when I first moved out there 5 years ago. I really don't remember ever seeing, but now what is it? Skid Row's expanded 25-30%, and it's just everything's just bled up. It's becoming what San Francisco is, where you have a very, very nice part of town, and there's syringes everywhere, and the homeless problem and everything. And it's like you sit there, and I'm like, what happens is, and this is like a huge thing about Democratic Party moving to socialism, is everyone's equally miserable. So you have people who are paying really, really high taxes and their property rates are going up, and people who don't own anything who are $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt think that it's the rich's fault or something like that. And what they do is they vote, the Democratic Party sweeps in and says, well, we'll lift you out of your dreg heap, but this is what we ask. We want you to pay a little bit more here. We want you to fund this program here or something. And what happens is that you get LA is not a utopia. LA is not a good city. It's not a good city for family.
You can't afford a house. Isn't it so interesting too, like how so many people are in debt? And I think the majority of people are in debt because of school.
Yeah.
And it's from these crazy liberal arts degrees that they went for. And, I think now there's sort of an infrastructure for that because, there's a lot of liberal cities and stuff like that. So they need somebody who can, I don't know, be an underwater basket weaver.
No, you precisely hit on that thing. And here's the difference, right? Back in our parents' days, there was no federal backing there was no federal student loans. So when people talk about what happened to colleges, it's that it wasn't an endless supply of money and manpower. So first off, not an endless supply. And then second off, now education's become a right. And not just high school, not even just community college. And some states are able to fund the community colleges for free. California is one of them. Tennessee is one of them because of lotteries and that sort of thing. I think it's a great thing if a state can do. But it's like, no, you need a 4-year university degree no matter what you're doing. And so and we're naturally, unfortunately, we've become a society of debtors, both physically, monetarily, and I think, of course, I think very much it's bled into our spiritual kind of rigor. So,
Yeah.
you tell a little 18-year-old girl who doesn't know what she wants to do, well, whatever you need to do. If you went to the public school system, K through 12, you need to go get a 4-year degree from a university, no matter what it is, because if you don't, you're not going to succeed at life. And so they change their majors 3, 4, 5 times. They go to a liberal arts school. They go to a private Catholic liberal arts school, right? And they rack up $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt for a sociology major, for an anthropology major, for a psychology major, for a business major. And they get out into the real world.
Only to learn that they want to be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And that was really what her vocation was all. Obviously not every woman, but you go into a lot of debt just to figure out that, hey, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah, I mean,
Fulton Sheen actually, I think in one of his talks around the 80s or so. So this must have been going on for a really long time, but in the 80s, I think he was saying that school has become a right and not a privilege, because back in his day, not everybody was going to school. There was people going into trade and etc. So who knows how long this has been going on?
Well, and
I don't know.
That's the thing, right? It's like, I mean, you and I both are. I have an associate's. Technically, I have the most worthless degree on paper, right? I have an associate's of general studies. What that doesn't tell you is that didn't tell you that I went to an extremely well-priced, rigorous film school, thank God, and that treated film like a trade, which I was very grateful for. And I know that what's your story, Rudy? You went to art school for a second, but then you just kind of started just working, right?
Yeah, I entered into art school. It was one of the worst decisions I've ever made. So I'm an art school dropout, and it feels pretty bad, but not really, because while I was going there, I went there for 2 years, and I had a pretty good scholarship. I was getting about 80% of it paid
in California.
For really at the time, I'm not sure if it's still the same thing, but it was one of the best photography schools in the nation. And just in general for arts, like I think I went to Art Center. So I'm not sure if this is true, but I think it is. They say that 70% of the cars, or all of the cars, what's the statistic? I think 70% of the cars were designed by people who went to Art Center. So they had a really great automotive program.
Right.
And at the time, maybe like in the 90s, they started waning down a little bit, but before that, it was like one of the greatest commercial photography schools. So I decided to go there. And halfway through, I started thinking, wow, my scholarship was only going to go in for 2 years, and then I had to front everything else. And I was thinking, wow, I'm going to graduate with almost $60,000-$70,000 worth of debt. And it's getting pretty hard to find work, like that's going to pay this off pretty quickly. And I started thinking, I don't know if I want to keep going and accrue all this debt. I was already kind of scared of going into debt. And so I said, no, you know what? I'm going to leave, and I'm going to try and find an internship and try and make it out that way, because it's going to be silly if I graduate with all this debt and, have a hard time finding a job and that sort of thing. And sure enough, like a lot of my colleagues that went to school, they graduated, they went through the whole thing, and they graduated with a massive amount of debt. And I honestly think out of like maybe 20, 30 of the students, maybe like 2 or 3 are really successful.
Yep.
So I don't know, man. I don't know. I think getting into debt is one of the worst things that you can do, especially like as a trad guy. Like, it's going to set you back, man. It set me back a lot of ways, like trying to pay things down. And then I don't know.
I think this is a strain we should really stick on, because again, what makes it all the more of a bad thing is that it's normal. Just as we ask like a fellow millennial, like, hey, where'd you go to school, right? It's the average debt for a 22-year-old graduate is $30,000. It's probably gone up, actually. It might be 35 now or something.
I think it's higher. Yeah.
Yeah. And the average salary that you get out making at that age is about 40, I think it is.
Yeah.
So, and when we talk about that, that's school debt. That's easy to point to, but that doesn't talk about the fact that people, you don't get disciplined on things like credit cards. You don't get disciplined on things like car loans,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. And I think I'll never forget this. I met a film theorist. I don't, what's a film theorist, right? But they went to they went to USC, and they spent $100,000 to get a degree that with their emphasis in film theory, which essentially is, I think, a glorified film critic. And then we're
That's
working in industry. Yeah, I
insane.
mean, it hurts me just to think so. But you see these metrics of, it's like, well, why are millennials putting off children, housing, all that kind of stuff? And I'm like, well, I mean, there's always like, so a lot of it is, of course, just like personal priorities in life. But yeah, if someone goes to school, or in your case, in the case of a lot of people, they go 2 years through school and they change their major. They
Yeah.
go, wow, I really don't want to, I thought it was going to be cool being a journalist. And it turns out, actually, like, I kind of really want to be a journalist.
Well, it's even worse when you're going to art school and they go in for one thing and then they're like, oh yeah, actually, I'm just gonna throw away all my progress and I'm gonna go into this other art field. I'm like,
mm,
dude, how, like, you're just these are the what was I watching the other day? It was like it was Dave Ramsey, actually.
I knew we were going to get to Dave Ramsey. You better
He was
freaking believe
talking,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was talking about buying a house for the first time,
Yeah.
and the person who called asked him, hey, I have this much money, and he puts out his whole status, and he says, and we're actually thinking about going through purchasing the house through my aunt, and she sold one house before, and we're gonna keep it in the family. And he had the best answer. He was like,
Mhm.
why would you set yourself up for failure like that?
Yeah.
Because when you're buying a house, this is a major purchase. You're spending a lot of money. So
Mhm.
any margin of error, like if you're overpaying, or if you're, I don't know, if the house isn't really up to code, or well,
Yeah.
not to code, if the house isn't
Yeah.
really like adequate and there's a lot of repairs to be done, that that small mistake can actually end up costing you like a lot of money down the road.
Oh yeah.
And it's the same thing with switching your major in art school. Like, why would you do that for something more worthless?
So I feel like art school, or the world of photography, is the same in the world of film. So maybe you get enlighten this.
Absolutely.
So I've said this, right? Film, like photography, it's an art, a science, a craft, but it's a trade. And for me, I've always said, if I lived out in Los Angeles with the same kind of desires to be a cinematographer as I am, I wouldn't have probably gone to school. I probably would have taken some classes, but I probably would have just at 16 started PAing on set, had my own camera by the time I was 17, and doing what all cinematographers are doing now, which is you get a little bit of gear and you just start doing stuff for your reel.
Just
So
do it. Yeah.
for me, I'm very grateful. I went to Colorado Film School, which was bundled with the Community College of Aurora, where I got my gen ed in, and it was a 2-year program, and $10,000. And I'm very, very, very grateful for that, because if I had gone,
That's reasonable.
oh my gosh, that's precisely what it should be. Because if I had gone to, say, USC or LA School of Film, that was the first film school I ever set foot in. I wanted it so bad, right? I would have graduated with like 80, 90, $100,000 worth of debt, you know?
I think at a certain point, people were going to these sorts of schools because of the name. The name carried a lot of gravitas.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of led me into going to that particular school.
But for me, I guess it's like the best thing I ever got out of film school was my reel.
Yeah.
I'd never touched any of that camera equipment before. I didn't even know like what RAW was. I'd never seen. I fell in love with the Canon DSLR look, because even that look was just so novel to me. Never seen the lighting, the grippage, everything. Coloring, you forget it. So for me, that was the greatest thing, and that's what I needed, because nobody in film cares where you come from. They just
Right.
want to see your work, especially when you're behind the camera. They're like, okay, well, do you produce a good image or don't you produce a good image? Doesn't matter if you go to USC. They don't even touch the camera till year 3 at USC, which means you could
Yeah.
spend $40,000 to $80,000 before. So is that the same with
Just fine.
photography? Has
Yes.
the kind of the prestige of the name faded?
Yeah. Well, when I entered into the school, I was pretty surprised because we had a really advanced program at the high school that I went to, and basically, how do I say this? I basically was in the photo room almost in my senior year. I was there like 80% of my time.
Yeah.
So, and then before that, like the years prior, I was in at least 2 photo programs or 2 photo classes uh, every year. So I got to experience something that a lot of people don't. And actually, it's one of the, I don't know if it still is. One of the teachers left who founded it, so I think it kind of fell apart after that. But
Mm,
it was a really special experience, and I got to play around with all kinds of mediums and everything. So when I got into art center, I was really disappointed because a lot of the stuff that we were learning, I had already learned,
yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
just, it was like, it felt like a waste of time. Not to mention the academic classes. I took a class once on interpreting dreams, and I think that was like a general ed class. And I'll never forget this
Yo.
class because we, it was like an advanced class, and the first day, this teacher has this like esoteric sort of
Naturally.
explanation of what the class is going to be like, and he sets up this great question. He's like, what if we could understand what dreams mean?
Oh my gosh.
I think we're going to tackle it in this class. Flash forward a whole semester at the end of the class. He's like, so yeah, I hope you realize that we can't interpret dreams. I'm like, gee, thanks, bud. Like, you could have told me that in the beginning of the class. I would have dropped
$10,000, please.
it. He like sticks out his hand. That'll
God.
be $10,000.
Dude, I think that I would never, I have a friend or a coworker, I should say, and he's going to Colorado Film School right now, but because it's COVID, they're not in class, right? So the hands-off approach is done, and he's already working in the industry technically, right? Because he's at the AI studios. So I'm like, I keep telling him, I'm like, why do you want to go back? He's like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
what happens if I don't? And I'm like, dude, when
dude, don't.
my very first gig ever was first assistant cameraman on a UCLA extension student film. This is essentially what I call the foreign-born UCLA kids student film. And I remember being like, okay, I'm going to learn real quick if UCLA's film program is more prestigious, learning more things, more professional than Colorado film schools. And I got
Mhm.
on that set and I realized, it turns out, no, the answer was that we're doing the same thing. There's not like a fast track program in the industry because it's all like a photography. It's all independent contracting unless you get in with a company doing something internally. So it's all about your portfolio. It's all about, okay, well, who do you know? What can you bring to the table? And how can we make this fish sing? And I'm astounded by how that mentality, it's easy for us because we're in the arts, but that mentality bleeds into plenty of other majors too. You
Of
know,
course.
like
And the cool thing too is you ended up doing some no film school stuff.
yeah,
And
I used to read them religiously in school, and then it's funny that for 3-4 years I
great.
worked for them. Thank God I worked with them, pretty regularly. Hosted for them, edited for them, shot for them. My main cinema camera, Blackmagic Ursa Mini
That's
Pro, I
great.
borrowed from them. So yeah, I mean, I'm very, very grateful to those guys too. Um,
Gee, I mean, if my children ever watch this video and
God forbid.
they have an idea of wanting to be an artist, please don't do it.
Yeah.
Please, I'm begging you, please
So
don't be an
tell me,
artist.
what do you think? Because I'm the same way. If my kid comes to me and said, here's the thing, I would let my kid become a cinematographer. I'm going to grill them the same way my parents grilled me. My parents sat me down and said, how much does a cinematographer make? Do you work for somebody? What do you do? So I didn't enter film school being like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the next Roger Deakins. By the end of film school, I was like, I'll do anything to survive within reason. If my kid says they want to be an actor, I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this. I'll say, find something solid, because you could be the best actor in the world, but if you're not Spartacus, you're not going to be Spartacus. So it's easier, I think, with cameras and lighting, and really if you become a good gaffer or an editor or something of that kind of sort, I don't think it'll actually really go hungry, because people can shoot their stuff,
No,
they'll
I
never
don't
want
think
to
so
edit it.
either.
Yeah, but if a photographer, you're being like, no kid, you're joining the
No,
priesthood.
it would be a total mistake to be a
Mm.
photographer. And the one thing I didn't touch on is that when I was going through this and deciding to go to school, I took about a year off after high school, and I was thinking about it, marinating on it. And I had all the pressures of the world telling me, hey, you're going to be nothing if you don't go to school.
Yeah. Yep.
And I unfortunately bought into that. But what was going on was, at that particular moment in history, digital cameras were becoming more accessible to people. It was becoming commercially available.
Mm.
And so
It's like the 5D
market,
era.
yeah, even earlier than that, it was
Oh,
like the Rebel era.
gotcha. Yeah.
Remember the Canon Rebel?
I'm my webcam right now is a Rebel T3i.
Yeah, this was back when the first Rebel came out.
Yeah.
And there's like a Nikon D series or something like that,
Yeah.
which is obviously still available, but it's like the newest technology.
Yeah.
But these cameras were flooding the market, and also all of these new users were flooding the market. And so eventually it ended up being that marketing agencies, or people who just needed photography in general, who needed a professional, they started to rely on these amateurs who could, honestly, most of them could do a pretty decent job if they set themselves to it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it stopped paying really well.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, when you were a commercial photographer, oh man, you could make 70-80 grand a year.
Yeah.
if you were
too.
good.
Yeah.
If you were with an agency or something like that, you could easily put in 70-80 grand. But those were the film days. And so I didn't have enough foresight to see that would change the market. So, and I made the mistake of going in there. But the cool thing is that we've kind of touched on this already, is that if you were interested in doing a trade like photography, and maybe you were doing film, I would, if somebody said I'm going to try film and they were going to be like a director of photography, or do editing or something like that, I think there's more work for that than there is for photography. So I would say, that's totally fine. But where is I going with this? Anyway, so the market got flooded, and I didn't have this is where I was going for. I ended up taking an internship in New York, and it wasn't my choice. It was just what was available. I had left school, and I was like experiencing just like extreme anxiety about my choices and everything. And I said, well, I can't just stop doing photography. This is what I've dedicated so much of my time to. And so I talked to a couple friends, and I ended up moving out to New York for 3 months. And I didn't have a plan. I just knew that I wanted to be an intern somewhere.
Yeah.
And I go out there just on a whim, and it's just a whirlwind. It's crazy. It's just a completely different lifestyle that I wasn't used to. And I found out that the internships I was going for in the fashion industry, because I wanted to be a fashion photographer, they weren't working out. Yeah. And I kind of figured out on the hard way, that it just wasn't for me. And I had a buddy who got me an internship at this magazine in New York. And sure enough, they started sending me out to shoot restaurants and food, because New York it used to have a really big food scene. After COVID, right. I'm not sure. I've heard that almost
ghost town.
A good amount are just, they're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
They just don't have anybody going there. So, I started shooting food, and I didn't think too much about it. When I came back to the state, to California, started shooting food and doing commercial work with food. So
Mhm.
did that, but honestly, it's kind of winding down, and I'm trying to figure out what the next move is, because if we tie it back to being a Catholic guy,
Mhm.
ideally you want to have your wife stay at home,
Yeah.
and I think most trad girls are interested in that. Um, it's a little hard to do it here in California, obviously, with the property costs and all that sort of thing.
Right.
So I'm looking into a trade that I can take into a different state, possibly, and do that. It's just hard to do that because a lot of my experience, I've sank into art. So
Mhm.
and that's what I enjoy doing. I mean, that's part of, like, binding books and that sort of thing. Like, I mean,
Very
those
good binding,
those
by the way.
skills. Oh, thank you.
Yes, if for our audience, if you haven't seen, Rudy has, oh my gosh, I think they're incredible. I think they're therapeutic Catholic ASMR. But Rudy restores essentially hymnals, missals, that sort of thing. And this is the latest one. It's St. Joseph Missal. Is that correct?
Yeah, this actually belonged to Ashley's grandmother.
Hmm.
Ashley's my wife, and so this is from the 50s,
Yeah.
and it was just falling apart and sitting in a glove box in Ashley's car, and I'm still getting up to binding my 1800s Bible. I
Oh
think I
yes,
showed
the
that in
family
one of the
Bible.
other
Yeah, Leo
episodes.
the 13th one.
Yeah, that's the one. I'm trying to work my courage up to that one, and bind it so that we can actually use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I would say it's very hard to be an artist. And if my kids are watching this in the future, please don't be an artist. Go into a trade or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe you'll be a doctor.
Well, you know what it is? This is the difference.
Who
So
knows?
I'm very grateful for my tenure in Los Angeles. I learned more about
Dude,
myself, and
I got to meet you.
I know that's exactly it. I was at playing Scrabble with Jen and my parents today, and we are talking about, Jen's one step closer to becoming a full Coloradan. Her voter registration went through and everything, right? So it's just part of
Nice.
the course. And I was telling my nephew Aston, who's 7, about how when my dad, who helped me drive out here and unpack, went back home, how I felt, how alone I felt,
Mm.
and just how really, for the first time in my life, how genuinely alone I'd felt.
How
And
old is Aston, by the way?
7, little
7.
like,
Okay.
yeah, little boisterous.
So
So I
deep conversation here.
Well, it's like when they're 7 years old, they've hit the age of reason, and so they really
Yeah.
begin to, just kind of see the workings of things.
Yeah.
And I said, though, I was like, I knew that, and so he said this. He said, "You were sad because you didn't get to see me all the time," which was completely true. And I was like, "That's true, but I don't regret any part of California, no big parts of California, because I came back with Jen and I got to meet you and Anthony and everyone at St. Vitus. And honestly, there came a point where I was praying to God. I was like, I love cinematography, but I know that it's going to be hard to stay out here with my faith and just do the circuit.
Yeah.
And I really feel drawn to family. And as grateful as I am for my industry experience, it's a roller coaster, right? The average day on set is 12 to 14 hours. You have to be willing, on the drop of a hat, to go from Los Angeles to Canada or to Mexico or to Nevada or to any place in the Union. Um, and you might be gone for a couple of days. You might be gone for a week. You might be gone for a month. Way longer than that. You might go to China, Taiwan. I don't care. Like any place. And it's hard to kind of have a family structure if dad has to, at the drop of a hat, do all these things. And it's hard to have a family structure when there's no benefits or looking to the future longer than a month, a week, something like that in place. So I've always said, like, I think that film is a young man's game. And it doesn't surprise me that the vast majority of people I work with in film, men and women, are not married and don't have children. And I really began to notice that. I was like, wow, it's weird that my friends or the people I work with are in their 30s. And at this point, you would think that, you have a house and you have a wife and children and a legacy. There are a lot of last ofs that you meet out in Los Angeles. You are going to meet people who are the literal end of their family line. Just,
Yeah.
is what it is. And I'm fine with that. Again, it's a lifestyle. I get it. Jen comes from the restaurant world. That's the same lifestyle, right? They're not, it's a lifestyle that some people are called to do. I genuinely believe that. And some people are not called to do. And I thought that I'm called for a happy medium of both, that I was never going to be a local 600 DP. I'm naturally family oriented, and I wanted something that was going to allow me to have my fulfillment of working in the industry, working with cameras and lighting and everything I love, and then also be able to come home and have a genuinely good marital and family life and have time for those sorts of things instead of having to kind of do a more delicate balancing act that you can do sometimes if you're in the rat race in Los Angeles. And I'm grateful for it. So I think, but here's the thing too, earlier, it's like, the artist lifestyle is hard. I do think that there are more places now than ever before where you can be a filmmaker, you can be a photographer. It might take you a little more to fight for it, but it's like there's companies here in Colorado, there's companies everywhere. Like somebody needs internal video, somebody needs internal photographs, and they'll always will recommend you, even if you're just shooting like first communion pictures or something like that. But what interests you trade wise, besides the fact that when this podcast becomes more dominant than when we surpass America Magazine and become the arm of the Vatican, of course that'll be our ticket.
If we live long enough and transhumanism is a thing,
oh my
and
gosh,
we're like robots,
yeah.
and by then we'll have a good pope.
God willing.
Then we'll be part of the arm of the Vatican, making media for them.
That's right.
Honestly, I have thought about it for a very long time, and I can't really seem to get a firm answer as to what the trade is going to be. I have sort of gotten to the point where I'm thinking it could be anything, and it's probably going to be one of those things where I'm going to have to do it, and it's just I'm going to have to try and not care about it too much.
Yeah.
As long as it makes things work. But that's kind of dangerous, I think. I think it's a little dangerous because you might burn out, or something will happen. But
this is the great dilemma, I think, also for like the trad man, because our orientation is to family and fatherhood in a very righted way.
Of course. Yeah.
And
doing matrimony in the traditional church is completely different. You know?
Oh yeah.
It's definitely ordered to the way that you explained it just now, which is family life, provider. You're doing everything you can for your wife to live out her vocation, and you living out your vocation as a man to provide.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, the world is, or at least where we occupy, it's hostile to family. Like it's, again, Los Angeles is a place, I think, that you look at the fact that no housing gets built, the zoning laws, everything is oriented towards, it costs you $1,800 for a 400 square foot studio in North Hollywood. Kind of hard to bring in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids into the world, right? And then what I think is this catch-22 is that it's one criticism of many criticisms that I do have of the church at large, because I don't think the church makes it very easy for people who are trying to live out their marital vocation as father and mother sometimes. By that I mean, I just mean to say, like, well, I just mean like this: like Catholic school is expensive as sin. And just like in the secular world, how it's beaten into your face, like you have to send your kid to a 4-year school no matter what, the Catholic Church says you have to send your kid you have to get your kid the proper Catholic education. Now, there's been a forgetting on the church at large that there is the domestic church first and foremost, But for a lot of us, it's like, it's depending where you're at, like it's hard to pay private school tuition fees to send your kid to Catholic school. And then you find out later, right, that it's not even a good Catholic school. So your kids got the grades and then they completely lost the faith, which is what's happening right now.
True. Yeah, they get scandalized, or they're around a lot of kids who maybe don't have a stable family life.
Or no faith life. I mean, there are plenty of, how many teachers, how many students in Catholic schools can do the whole routine and not have to hear a drop or even consider the faith whatsoever. I think it's a consequence of the nuns disappearing, right? Because a lot of orders were really oriented towards teaching. And I'm not saying like that's just like the failsafe for the financial burden of Catholic education, but for the most of Catholic history, your kids are kind of taught by the nuns or by the friars down the road or something like that. And then now it seems like Catholic education in some parts of the world, I should say, because there is traditional and classical education rising, but the costs still have to, kind of come down a little bit,
Right.
a lot. But it seems like now they're competing against the public school system or the other private school system, the secular private schools, and it's just like a mess. And so you get a teacher in there at a Jesuit high school who's not living to the Catholic faith, and the church goes, okay, well, that's a problem. And people go, well, how dare you? Like, I made it through 12 years of Catholic school, never once had to open up eschatology or open up Thomas Aquinas or anything. So who are you to judge and all that kind of crap?
It's a multifaceted battle too, because the other thing is the culture. So on one hand, you have maybe a poor example of a Catholic school, and it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But also in the culture, there isn't a lot being done to cultivate family life, as we've already discussed, like in the film world. For instance, for you realized that it was going to be very hard for you to be a family man and also do film to the sort of degree where you would be successful.
Yeah.
With all the traveling and that sort of thing. I think in the culture today, there isn't a lot of emphasis on family life, or even really a a structured family dynamic, to the point where, like Black Lives Matter is against the
Yeah,
nuclear
nuclear
family,
family, right?
that sort of
The thing
thing.
that would actually save Black culture.
Yes, exactly. So there's a degeneration in the way that the culture thinks about family. And there's a disconnect there. And so that's why you have careers now that really don't provide a person with enough to actually, make it so that they could feed their family and be successful. I, I obviously I don't think I'm qualified to really go into detail about that sort of thing, but that's just an observation. And also, it's an observation that I noticed that Blessed Pope Pius IX
Mm-hmm.
said in his encyclical that we're reading, Casti Connubii, which is on chaste marriage.
No.
He makes that example, and that was written. When was that, Jordan? That was like
This is in the
30s or the
late.
20s.
This is in the well, it's before Pius X, so I think it's
Okay.
actually written in either the extreme early 1900s or probably the extreme early 1900s, because Pius IX comes after Leo the 13th, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, let me see here. I have it up here.
Yeah, I was gonna
This
say you
was written
pull it up.
in December 1930.
Okay, Sean. Okay, there you go.
And anyone who's any guy or a lady who's discerning marriage,
This is
I would recommend you read that one. That one's pretty good.
yeah.
It's easy to read too. Some encyclicals are not.
Well, I mean,
we were talking about JP2, and I think you asked me if I had a JP2 encyclical, and I said, yeah, I have one on work, but every time I crack it open, I have no idea what I'm reading.
that's
Just
fine.
like what's the one? It's on modernism by Saint Pope Pius X. I cracked that one open. I've tried 3 times to read it, and I get to like the 3rd chapter. I'm like,
well, this is
what am I reading?
You had a good point, because as much as I love traditional Catholicism, obviously, but what people have to understand too is like traditional Catholic, our ancestors, which were just really our grandparents, being traditional Catholic just meant being Catholic. Like encyclicals, as we think of them, particularly from the last 3 popes, weren't really that widespread. You know what I mean? Like they were essentially just affirmations and reaffirmations of and synthesis of church teachings, which sometimes could be very good for the common man, like Casti Connubii, and other times you're like it's like ones on work and stuff. It's like, okay, that's really good, but for the most, like your average like working, you're like, okay, like I get it, like the church, you know. don't exploit your workers. Socialism is the big gay. So, but man, I find, and of course, like I tried. I remember when I tried to give the fair shake, right? I've read a little bit of Tutti Frutti. I've read I'm sorry, Fratelli Tutti.
Tutti Frutti.
Oh, every time I think,
That's the new one, by the way.
That's the new one. It's don't if you live your entire
Don't
life
bother
reading it, you probably will be better of a Catholic for it. I'm just going to say that flatly. It's not written for Catholics, obviously.
That's like that's a test on how far your limits of patience can go.
Really,
Reading through that.
God is using it.
If you get through it, you're a saint.
Right. It's like on modernism, right? It's a very because it's not a very. It's what?
It's a good one, but it's hard to read.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think a lot of it, it's not a very pragmatic one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very academic.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like, honestly, I like the concept of the Vatican being academic like that, and then letting,
of course,
different bishops and priests
compared to
now. I do like Pope Benedict. I've only read one of his encyclicals.
Benedicts are good, yeah.
And it's on love. I'm looking. Oh, here it is. Hang on 1 second.
Oh yeah, Deus Caritas Est.
Oh, I'm sorry. God is love. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a great one. If you're really, I think it's a good one. Yeah. Deus Caritas Est. If you are looking for authentic Christian marriage and Christian understanding of love, I mean, Benedict, I think, is a very good theologian, obviously. And I think this one was uber helpful for me. Let me ask you this question, because I think that we're kind of not skirting it, but talking about it a little bit. But, in this culture that's hostile to family, I don't know if you've ever listened to it's like Tucker Carlson sat down with Ben Shapiro on the Sunday Special. You ever heard that one?
No, I haven't. Is it new?
No, it's older now. But what's funny is that Tucker represents right now the social conservative in a way that I think other parts of the political spectrum have kind of forgotten. So, we talk about the free market and how good the free market is and everything. But one downside we need to talk about, just honestly, is the pursuit of worldly pleasures making us happier? Is the march of technology and progress and our pockets and the world's pockets being lifted out of poverty actually creating healthier people in one way, but is it creating happier people? And it's not an argument for socialism, far from it, but someone like Tucker Carlson says, the problem is that what the Trump populist gets and the Bernie Sanders socialist gets is that average in this country isn't what it used to be. Your purchasing power has gone down significantly. And so, the American dream of just like, all right, it's kind of nice to have like a house and, a little lawn and some kids and a car and all that kind of stuff. It's not impossible, obviously not. But in terms of purchasing power, it has become more difficult. The average income in the United States of America for a household is $50,000 approximately, which stretches some places way better than others.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like crazy that, and he talks about like, you get guys on like Andrew Yang that talks a lot about the march of technology and how that we're just all destined to essentially be beat out by robots. I don't know if that's true or not true. I tend not to think so because, we're kind of a far way off, but Tucker said something that to a Republican conservative guy sounds radical. And he was like, if I was president, I could do whatever I want. I would shut down the automation of truckers. Ben Shapiro's, free market brain kind of popped off. But Tucker said, here's the thing. Trucking is the largest employer of non-college educated men in this country. And so if you just say learn to code essentially to your largest subsection, if you screw them over, it's not the societal ills that are born from that, right? The hollowing out that happens in the places like the Rust Belt and all these other places just become exemplified. And so there's an obligation of a society, of a good society, not just to allow their citizens to pursue satisfaction economically, financially, physically, spiritually, in the way that they might see fit, but it's really is for the protection of the family unit. And part of the family unit is the fact that you don't want to say, well, it's great that there's so many women in the workplace if that workplace participation really boils down to secretaries and pencil pushers and these sorts of things, instead of and using that as like a crux against family, essentially. And I was like, that's a very, very compelling thing, because I think that's where we're at in our current times, right? Trump talked about, like, this is great, low unemployment for African Americans. Everyone said that's good. Low unemployment for Asians, for Hispanics. And I said, this is all very good. He said lowest unemployment rate for women ever. And I said, well, that might be bad. Like, I mean,
Could be bad,
it
potentially.
could be bad. Like, I mean, I think a woman should be able, of course, to do what she wants to do, but also, like, G.K. Chesterton says, women said they would not be dictated to, then promptly became stenographers. And
Yeah.
there's enough Vice and Huffington Post and Slate articles of all these like bloggers living in New York, and they're paying $2,000 for an apartment, and they're $40,000 in debt for a journalism degree, $80,000 from Vanderbilt or someplace. And I'm like, this is making you happy? This is supposed to be like the feminist mantra realized? Like, a single apartment alone, no possessions, no like families far away back in Kentucky, and you hate them because their politics are so like anti-progressive and everything, and like you turned into a Marxist in school, and now this is happiness?
Well, it's funny that you touched on that. I was talking to Ashley earlier today.
Probably a good thing to talk to your wife from time to time. I don't know how
We
trad that
weren't
is, though, honestly.
Yeah, we weren't specifically talking about that, but something you said just kind of lit a little light in my head. There's a trend, and I don't know if you've noticed this before. I think people have noticed enough where it's become a meme.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of younger people, guys and girls, who talk a lot about like their anxiety, right? And
Yeah.
people are saying like, oh, I have crippling anxiety and all this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if it's not because they aren't experiencing life as it's supposed to be lived, right? Like,
Yeah.
man and woman come together and form a family unit, and the family is the nucleus, it's the cell of society. And because there's a disconnect there in our culture today, I think a lot of people feel disenfranchised and depressed because they're living in like you said, in like a tiny closet in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, when I was living in New York for 3 months, I was living in a really nice area, and I was paying $800 for basically like half of a room, which is like the size of a bathroom.
Right. I was going to say.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I wasn't happy because I was sharing that room with another person. So
Really?
yeah.
Okay. Sure enough.
So $800 to share a bedroom in New York. And I mean, let's expand it out of New York. Even if you're living in LA, which is, I think, maybe a little less expensive.
Yeah. I mean, you get 3/4 of a room.
You don't have much, man. And I think people feel depressed because they're not living out their vocation.
Yeah.
They don't have an idea of what their vocation is anymore. Yeah. It's good. And I think I have to say this because who knows, we might encounter somebody who's not Catholic or something. But it's good to be a wife. It's good to have children. Yeah. It's good to raise them. It's good to be a father. It's good to go out to work and provide for your family, and be a martyr for your family. That's a good thing. That's something that you should look forward to, because that's the way that God made it.
You know what we've done, and we're doing this in pre-Cana right now, and our priest is very, very good. But one of the things that he talks about is dismantling feminism. Mm-hmm. And so I'll say from this kind of strain, because I meet a lot of women, and especially as traditional Catholics, it's really nice for the first time in my life to meet women who say what they want to do is they want to be moms.
Yeah.
And we have, as a society, we have pushed motherhood to the fringe of society. Like we've said that killing your baby is virtuous, that mm-hmm. picking your career over family is a good thing, that men need women like a fish needs a bicycle. And it's funny because one thing that our priest told us was, if you look at what's happening now, people are realizing all the lies that our 50, 60 years of the sexual devolution and feminism has told us. Men and women are not equal, and their requirements of happiness are different. women are more social and nurturing and maternal. And so therefore there is this great pride. It's something that even in fatherhood, even in paternity, that we don't get the depth of because we don't, carry a child for 9 months. But
Yeah.
there are millions of women who do have career, or who went to careers, right? Did the whole school route, and to your earlier point, they became a mom and they suddenly did not want to go back to work. I'm sure we'll talk more about Dave Ramsey later, but he gets calls all the time, which is like, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a homemaker, and I have this X amount of debt thing. I didn't really think this is what I wanted to do, but I looked at that kid and I was like, I don't want to leave him ever. And this is where I want to be. And for me, it's like kind of looking at society and how everything has gone away. We are alone because we've told people for generations that family doesn't bring you happiness, that career and the pursuit of yourself and whatever interests you want to do, as long as it's not built to an eternal concept like family, that's what makes you happy. And so, yeah, there are people who now are in their 30s or in any age, and family for them is just mom and dad and brother and crazy Aunt Liz, and they come around every Thanksgiving. But otherwise than that, they go back and they have an apartment, or they're cohabitating with somebody, and this is the second, third boyfriend, girlfriend, right? Bouncing from relationship to relationship. And if they go back on Facebook, Instagram, and they see that one girl from high school got married at 22 and now she has a kid, and they seem like it's their struggles, but heck, they have a house. That's kind of nice. And it's not just about the materials, but like she has somebody that's her husband, and he has somebody that's his wife, and they can confide in each other. And what I was going to say is, in the 1970s, if you look at movies, literature, anything from the 1970s, the divorced woman is powerful, and she can push aside her kids and push aside her husband and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. And and so you get these dramas of like the husband and the wife are divorced, and the kid has to kind of choose, but look, it's not a big deal. This is what happens. In 2020, there is no illusion about the goodness of a broken family. It's all bad. And so if you see art, culture, media about divorce, about broken families nowadays, written by the generation that grew up in a single parent household, it's all bad. There's this understanding amongst everybody that, and it's statistically proven, that mother and father being together help in so many ways, and that there's nothing wrong with a woman saying that my vocation is motherhood, and it's not a dirty word anymore. And I think it's great that we find so many women. There are women in our lives, obviously, but certainly there are more women who are more likely to step out and go, no, I think being a mom's great. I think it's awesome. I didn't fail the sisterhood by not going to college. I'm not stupid, obviously. Like, being a mom, being a wife is extremely difficult. Like, a woman has to put up with you and has to put up with me for the rest of her days.
Yeah.
And then also
and
love us
children.
so much. Yeah. And children.
And take care of the house. Look, taking care of the house, I think people have this idea that it's like an easy thing to be a stay-at-home parent, but it's really not. You have, this is your domain, and you have to, there's all kinds of things to do, really, to be a homemaker.
Maybe you're at this rate, but I'm at the point, because you're obviously married and fatherhood is just around the corner. I'm going to be married soon.
God willing.
I know, God willing. Yeah. Just remember the name of Jordan. That's all I need. But I'm at the point where I learned this from Gavin McInnes. He said in an interview, I think with Tucker Carlson, again, like on one of his older shows, he was like, I
love Tucker, man. He's so cool.
I think that he represents a much needed voice, like the last of the traditional WASPs, if you will, like the last of an American spirit that's long been kind of killed.
I don't want to throw you off too much from your point, but have you seen the video of Tucker? He's fishing in like
and that guy
Central
comes up
Park.
to him.
Yeah, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
He comes up and Tucker's like, "Why are you filming me?" He's like, "Because I can." He's like, No. I'm just wondering. I'm not trying to infringe your right. I'm wondering why you're filming me. And it turns into this like really wholesome conversation. Tucker's a nice guy. He's a really good guy.
Well, what he represents is I think that, again, what I like about him is that he is a representation of social conservatism, just traditionalism, right? Like, Tucker's what everyone's dad feels like, in a way.
Right.
And what he said is this: Tucker grew up as a WASP, right? He was the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, high church Episcopalians. He sent his kids to Episcopal school, all that kind of stuff, right? Like this is an old breed of Americanism. And he woke up and he said, you have to understand, like, I'm from the class of people, they used to say in his age, they were like, anyone who was like white Anglo-Saxon Protestant was just called a Republican. And that's not true anymore. And these people who are now the elites, as you talk, because he's like, look, I come from the elites. Of course I do. Like, I know where my house is. I send my kids to these schools. Like, it's not like a surprise. But what makes a difference is that once upon a time there was this obligation not to quench the little man. You needed the little man still. And he's like, these people really do think you're stupid. They really do think that you going to church every Sunday with your 5 Catholic kids in tow, and you voting for Donald Trump, and you wanting to make America great and all this other kind of crap is stupid. And when the media or anybody says not uneducated, right, not college educated people, I'm like, God bless them, because at least they have their heads still on their shoulders. At least they didn't go to school to become Marxists. And he's like, right. Look, this is what happened. He's like, look, this is what I'm realizing for like my own kids. This is what I'm realizing for everyone around me in the neighborhood. The Republicans all disappeared, the conservatives all disappeared, and to hear them talk about, even it exists even in our own, as conservatives, it exists even in our own speech, right? When we want to sound like somebody who's uneducated or backwoods, we immediately slip into a Southern accent and put a banjo on our knee, right? Because this person is supposed to be the uneducated last bastion of America that doesn't exist. And I think that Tucker has a very good beat on that. I'm very grateful to his insight. And something I was just going to say just a little bit earlier, is that it seems to me like things are kind of slowly turning back because things have gotten so decayed and decrepit. But also, the last of that era is just shaking their freaking fists wherever they can, tearing down the whole walls. And it's nice to it's nice to see an ACB take the place of RBG, That feels like such an antithesis. And you realize their hatred, because I thought it was feminist to be able to have, like, she has both. She got the kids and the career. Like, we all have to kind of make a sacrifice.
Interesting how they turned on her like that.
Oh yeah.
This is a woman who, like you just said, who has it all. And for the people now who want that, they think that she's a bad person.
Yeah.
But it's because she's conservative.
The dogma lives loudly within you.
It's because they know that she's not going to play along with the sorts of ideas that maybe RBG did.
It's because she's a real Catholic and she acts upon it. And one thing about her, I think it's a respectful crush on her. But that I know, no, I'm just playing. Jen's gonna like burst through a wall. But what I just mean to say is this:
like, well, I have a crush on Dan Crenshaw.
I have a crush on Dan Crenshaw.
That rhino.
Oh, is he really?
Rhino. Yeah, he's a rhino.
Oh, we'll get to
I don't like Dan Crenshaw.
Oh, I like how he looks. I do like politicians.
Cool. I'll give you that. He looks like a superhero.
Yeah, he looks like a. But what I was going to say is this: during her hearing, I can't tell you this. She talked about her and Jesse, her and her husband, and their decision, like that cohesive family unit. Like you can tell for her that family is the most important thing.
Oh yeah.
Like just like it's not just having 7 kids; it's just how she speaks about family. And how nice it is, because there's so many times in politics where family isn't the most important things in our own lives. Like, you meet people all the time where it's like family's just a side note, the thing you come home to, it's nice, but it's not a vocation. And so I think that for the left, one thing that was so shocking to them, why they, never mind their hatred of abortion and thinking that she's going to apparently take away contraception and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I mean, she can be as papist as she wants, but watching her, I was like, wow, these people hate her because she is a complete FU to the sexual devolution, to the feminist movement. You were supposed to pick between and you were supposed to hate being a mom of 7, and you left that, you took that up instead of being a Supreme Court. That's what the narrative's supposed to say. Instead, she goes, I can do this. Like, I'm used to being in a group of 9, is what she says. And you're like, That's not easy. That's real courage and real strength in an era where everybody's so brave, stunning, much wow, everything. That's real, that's real feminine genius.
I think also too, it might be easier because our children are a little bit older. If I remember correctly, I think most of them are, well, maybe
no,
not.
no, no, they're not. That's
No,
the thing.
no, there's a lot of young kids
And
in
one of
there
them is
actually.
special needs. So,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
So if she can do it, anybody can. No,
yeah. I
maybe
mean, but you know what's nice is this, right? Because family's been so divorced in our life that being a traditional Catholic, what's nice is like going to mass and seeing kids and seeing
it's awesome.
normal people just trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
Like, you know, we both come from like, well, let's see. You know, oh, I guess our backgrounds are a little different in terms of upbringing, in terms of
yeah.
like, you know, that kind of thing, right? I come from gentleman farmers. I think your family's a little more working class. Is that fair?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But to be a traditional Catholic, you kind of see the whole spread of the empire, trying to figure it out. Like Saint Vitus has like the top actors and that sort of thing, you know,
Hmm.
and then it has like working class people with like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, like just being like, what the heck are we doing? We're doing it for the Lord. And I love that. I think that this great division in society about the 1% or the elite or whatever, part of the reason think this marks this breakdown, because in reality, a good empire is that you say there is going to be a noble class, but the nobles can't ever be divorced from your citizenry. And so it makes a lot of sense that if you're going to be elite, you better, like, I think about this with film all the time. What I love about the top film guys, there's a lot of very, very genius directors and cinematographers. But like, I met Roger Deakins and got to talk to Roger Deakins, and you're like, oh, he's just one of the, like, he just made it, but he's normal. I've met a lot of the 1%. I've worked for them. I shot for them. And it's funny watching the guys at Goodyear Company, the very successful multi-million-dollar company. They're car guys. They'll talk about cars to the blue in the face. It's not about money. I mean, money's important, sure. I mean, these cars are works of art, but they love just talking about cars. They know everything. These people who have way more money than I'll ever see. And that obligation, I think, is just being so attacked that rich and poor don't need each other. That really, if you're rich, it's immoral, right? The billionaire class is immoral, or wanting to make a better life for you and your family is immoral, or something like that. It's so backwards.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the only thing I can think of now is how fulfilling that's going to be a father, and how fulfilling it's going to be for Ashley, because I know that she wants to be a mother also. Yeah. And I just know from like the depths of my heart, I know that this is what God planned for us. And I think also God planned for you.
Yeah.
And you and Jen. I mean, us who are going to be married. We have a lot of friends who are getting married now, so
I know, right?
it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And as to how many children we get blessed with, I don't know. But I think of one of our close family friends who adopted us from St. Vitus, and she was explaining to us about it's a big family. You know, I think there's seven of them. So she was telling us that there was a time where she started to worry. You know, she had a kid on the way, and she was thinking, well, you know, it's going to be our 6th or 7th kid, and it's going to be kind of hard. But obviously, you got to do everything you can. You know, don't just sit on your behind and not work and do everything. But she told us that, you know, if God blesses you with a child, He's also going to provide. You know, and sure enough, she told us that after the child was born, that they got by. And obviously it was stressful, you know, to
having one kid stressful,
have that sort of pressure. But yeah, I mean, when you have a great faith and you realize that a child is a gift from God, of course God has the opportunity to provide for you. You know, obviously if you're like looking for work and doing the best you can, right? And I don't think there's a perfect situation too where it's always going to be a single income family. There's occasions where maybe you're not called to live out in a cheaper part of the states. Maybe you're called to stay here in California,
Mm,
and your wife happens to be a lawyer or work somewhere else. As long as you have the intention of living out your vocation,
mhm.
of placing your family and your home at the top of your list, and you get everything done, I don't see why not.
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, like there are, I think that what we're trying to do is we're trying to reclaim the culture.
Of
I want
course.
to live in a culture where it is like the norm, and economically it's the norm to live in a single stream of income household, right? Where your wife staying home is something that's just kind of the natural thing if she desires, that you decide as a couple, depends on what you're doing, right? Um, instead of something that's like, okay, well, you know, we kind of have to both get out there and schlep it for a second. Yeah. And I think that helps so much with headship, certainly. I think it helps so much with just kind of determining um, each other's strengths and weaknesses in each other's really honest vocations. Um, and what's nice about that, now, of course, again, um, that's a good culture to bring about. Um, because what we've done now in this culture, and again, I'm not saying like it's sinful or demonic that women are working, obviously not. I can't think of where nurses or teachers would be without women. So, right.
Mhm.
But I will say this, it's what we've done is we've made marriage and we've made children a commodity.
Yes.
And we've completely destroyed of the fundamental building block of civilization, which is the family unit. And we now have all these effects of what happens when, and I see this all the time, right? It's like mom and dad are working. And so the kid just stays with the nanny all the time. And they grow up with some form of mom and dad, but not really the proper kind of orientation of what it means. And for me, like, I am looking very much forward to marriage. I'm looking very much forward to fatherhood. Um, there are a lot
Me
of,
too. I want to see that. I want to see that on you.
I know I want to see it on you, and I
There
can't
was
wait.
there was one day that you must have been taking care of somebody's kids, but there was a day where you were at mass with Jen, and there was
Oh, those
two
three,
kids
yeah.
with you,
Mm-hmm.
three two or three kids
Yeah.
with you, and I
Yeah.
saw that, and it's like one of those moments where you're supposed to be paying attention in mass, but you kind of like you get caught on looking at something, and you're like, whoa, and you start thinking about it, and I saw that, and I said, Jordan's going to be a great dad. I see
Oh.
that. I think actually when I looked over, you were like explaining to the kid
Uh-huh.
what
Well, let me
was
let,
going on. I was
let
like,
me
wow, that's like dad mode right
I
there.
use my nephew as my guinea pig because, and I tell this to Jen, and let me tell you, this, especially now in your married life, but for Jen and I, one of the highest compliments, like one of the highest affections we've started giving each other, just in the natural progression of our relationship, is like when Jen looks at me and she says, like, I cannot wait to be the mother of your children.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I'm
It's
like,
a good feeling.
wow. I'm like, I tell her all the time, I'm like, look, I cannot wait for you to be my wife. Oh, well, she tells me I cannot wait for you to be the father of our children. I say, I cannot wait for you to be the mother of my children, I should say. Um, and I was just in the car today, and I figured that like I was out here with a lot of my coworkers are married men with children. I've met some of their wives and some of the kids, and one has he has 4 daughters spread from 10 years old down to 2, and they're absolutely adorable. And it's nice because the nicest thing is this: in Los Angeles on set, I can't tell you how many freaking pictures of like dogs and cats and pets I've looked at. And it's nice that that energy is properly oriented when people want to talk about their kids. And when they have kids, like they don't shut up about the kids, and I love it. I'm always like, hey, how's your daughter doing here? Like, what's going on here? And people will they beam with pride, and it's stressful. Like I have a friend, he has a newborn baby, and him and his wife therefore are not sleeping, you know,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can tell like that's stressful, that's hard. Like parenthood is hard, fatherhood's hard, motherhood's hard, but you can tell they wouldn't trade that for the world,
Yeah.
you know. And I really, it's so funny how, because Jen is my vocation, my future, and I now see what that means, how I can tell that I've been preparing also for what fatherhood means. Because I've always liked kids, you know, like I really have genuinely liked kids, but like now I'm like, I can't wait to have kids. And like, I'm like, I'm going to tell them this, like, I'm going to show them this. I can't wait to teach my sons and my daughters, like, how to clean a rifle. I can't wait to like, take them fishing. I love, like, with my nephew, like, he was feeling sad today, right? And I pulled him aside into his room and I was like, well, what's wrong, you know? And he's explaining to me. And I said, you know, listen, first off, like, it's okay to be sad. I don't want you, like, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to have, it's okay to be upset, you know? And so I gave him some tissues. I just sat with him and I was like, I got to remember this for my kids. But I really think it's exciting how God lets us play such a grand part in his divine plan for souls, that we can actually, just as he is our father, that we can have the imprint of that fatherhood on our own children. Like I really can't wait. And I can't wait to be bouncing ideas off of you, because your kids are going to come before mine. So I can't wait to be like, hey, Rudy, what do you think?
Well, I imagine they're going to be a year older, so I don't know how many
I
years
mean,
you
yeah,
got
but
on me.
I'll be like
Um,
taking notes from you. You'll tell me the sleep patterns, what to expect, all that kind of stuff, you know?
I got to tell you, I mean, I come from I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I come from a pretty broken family, and
Yeah.
I've had my dad in my life, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I don't think I had a normal upbringing to the point where I feel like I'm comfortable, um, like saying I'm going to be this kind of dad, I'm going to be this kind of dad, and
Yeah.
I've actually thought about this before, and I'm curious as to what you think, for your own family life. But what kind of father are you going to be?
Mm,
Like for me, my father, to the degree that he's still around in my life, it's different. But when I was growing up, he was very authoritarian.
yeah.
Um, and there's good things to it and bad things to it. I don't really know much about my dad,
Mm,
other than what he does and, like, how he started doing that and that sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, which is the bad. But the good thing is that because he was authoritarian and really didn't give me a lot of time to just kind of do my own thing, he got me working really quickly. I started working when I was 10.
Oh.
And so he was an upholsterer. He still is.
Mm.
And so he had me working in his upholstery shop. So instead of having downtime watching TV and that sort of thing, enjoying
Cool.
summer breaks and that sort of thing, I
Mhm.
was working in an upholstery shop and getting my knuckles all bloody and like ripping off old fabric off of. If you don't
Right.
know what upholstery is, it's like one of the original crafts, like,
Uh-huh. That's right.
um, where you restore furniture and that sort of thing. So, I was working, and
That
I
explains a
remember
lot about your
growing.
restoration of projects, by the
Well,
way.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's also why I went into photography, is because I like to make things.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the bad thing is that I I feel like when I'm gonna raise kids, that's probably gonna come out because,
Mm.
you by default go back to the way that you were raised, and you
Mm.
think that's the way that you're gonna raise your kids, right? Like, that's what worked for me, therefore I'm gonna do it that way.
Mhm.
And I think I have to, like, be very careful with that, because there were times where that wasn't really the greatest thing, and it actually pushed me to do things that were more rebellious.
Mhm.
So I don't know, I'm curious, like, what what kind of father do you think you're going to be? But also, um all the more if you're experiencing something similar to what I just told you, if whatever viewer is out there, um it really helps to be in a traditional parish, because when you're sitting there in mass, obviously you have to be present, and you have to, um, participate in the mass as much as you're able to. Um, but there's a lot of families there,
Yeah.
and there's a couple fathers that I admire from a distance. I don't think I've ever told them, but I observe what they're doing, and I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
And it helps. It really helps to be in a traditional parish that has and fosters the family life, like St. Vitus.
you can
And no
see.
doubt your parish as well.
Oh
As
man,
well.
I mean, when I say note taking, I mean I especially the guys in my office, right? A lot of them are good Catholics, and so I ask them, I'm like, especially like one of my coworkers there, again, with his 4 daughters, I'm like, how do you balance that and a marriage, right? Because I can tell this. I'll get to what kind of father I am. First off, I want only sons, and this is why. Because not just because girls are
Easier.
more trouble, but because I know like I have such a soft spot in my heart for if I have daughters.
Yeah.
Like I can. Jen's the one
I
that
can
told me
see
first.
that.
She was like, you'd be such a good girl dad, and I was
You
like,
would, but it would rip your heart out, I think.
well, the moment they hit 13, it's all over.
Yeah.
The moment they start bringing boys around. Okay, so I think I want to address one thing you said earlier, and I think that it's true that your influence that you get first and foremost is your own father, because that's father to you, literally. And I think that some people, they kind of embrace parts of those, and then they reject like wholesale some other swaths. So
Mhm.
I wonder if parts of how you'll be a father also expresses itself in how you are in marriage as well, is what I always wonder. Like, I'm a kind of guy, like, and also the second thing is that it's temperaments as well. So we just learned about the 4 temperaments in pre-Cana, uber
Mhm.
important. I'm sanguine choleric, Jen is choleric melancholic. And so what that essentially means is like, my as head of the household, my kind of style, the way that I do it in my cinematography work is like, I don't like to just be an authoritarian and just like push things all the time, my way or the highway. I'd much rather put people in place who are competent at their job and let them do competent things, right? So I can tell like my fatherhood style, the way that I see it, the way I try to express it with my nephew is like, I don't want to just say my way or the highway, suck it up, buttercup, without giving them like a fair kind of
Yeah.
trial first. I'll still make the decision because that's my choleric side. Like, I'll be like, look, this is the way. Of
Right.
course, this is the way. I've always said that in our household for our kids, there's going to be really 2 big commandments. And the first one is that in this household, we honor Christ and his church. And if you want to live in a way that's contrary to that, that's perfectly fine, but we will not live that way in this household. And the
Mhm.
second thing is that your mother is my wife and queen of this household. And you can do a lot of things you cannot talk back to your mother. That'll bring me in uber quick.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that part of me is like, at the same time, like, I look forward to a lot of the growing pain activities that you do with your children, because without like being an authoritarian, like, and that's how I kind of try to do things with my nephew. Like, I want my kids to learn the lessons that I learned, but it wasn't quite the same way with my dad. My dad, he's a senior analyst of nuclear weapons for the federal government. He was a spy, is what I call him, but he audited nuclear programs. My dad never really like wrestled with us. We went fishing on occasion, that sort of thing. Now that I'm in my 20s, I have a whole kind of cooler, more, I'd say, engaged relationship with my dad. My dad was a very good father, very good provider, and very good about teaching me the faith. Um, I'm going to
That's the
take
most important thing.
most important thing. What I'm
Yeah.
going to do is I want my kids to know that I'm a pillar that they can lean on as well. So I want to do activities with my kids. I look forward to teaching my sons and my daughters how to shoot a gun. And I look forward to taking them fishing. And because Jen comes from a broken household, one thing that she's told me, and she doesn't really have a relationship with her father, you know? And for her, she was like, look, the man that I want to marry, I wanted him to have those qualities of good fatherhood, because I didn't get that. And what I've realized is that, especially in regards to daughters, is why I think that her saying that I'd be a good girl dad is such a high compliment. Because what I realized is that coming from a broken household, how much difficulty that causes.
It
If your
does. Yeah.
perception, I mean, you know this better than I do, but if your perception of fatherhood is warped in some capacity or is absent, that makes it all the more difficult, it seems, in your spiritual life to cling to God as father, because your sense of father is, well, he's out the door. So what does it mean? That's certainly been
Right.
Jen's experience. Um, and so for me, like, I've realized like the way that you discipline your sons, the way that you talk to your sons is uber important. Because I don't want to just be the hammer and sickle. I'll bring down the law, but I also want them to be like, look, like, I taught you how to do right. I want you to spread your own wings and fly. And also, like, I'm training young men here. For daughters, especially, like, you as father are their first and foremost understanding of how masculine energy and how masculine touch, especially, should be exhibited. So you train your daughters, you teach your daughters, you instruct your daughters by your own example how to pick good husbands, how not to bring losers home in high school or whatever. You know, no doubt there'll be one or two, but like, you know, how genuinely when you pick a guy that you know is the one, how you're like, yeah, he treats you as you should be treated. And I look forward to that protective element. I look forward to them being able to talk to me about things, and I want to be that pillar for them. And I really want to be that.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's also having a healthy family life too is a great example for the children to understand what to look for.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If they're dating somebody who, hopefully they're not dating like in high school, because you know it's inevitable, it's not going to work out.
Well, I'm with you, except at the same time, like I do think that, you know, it's like they're gonna, you know, you ask a girl to a dance or coffee or whatever. I'm like, you gotta get heartbroken.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. But like, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is later on in life, they have a good example of what a healthy family dynamic is. They're less prone to make the mistake of marrying
a loser,
the guy or the woman who's not gonna help them get that.
Precisely right. Here's the thing. I think that this is so important for me. Like, I think that part of fatherhood and motherhood is also like, to your point there, it's like, how do you teach your children how to select properly? And it's like, I don't want my marriage to also just be put on the back burner with having kids. Kids changes the whole dynamic of marriage, right? Right now, if like you and Ashley want to, you guys can go out there and get ice cream. You know, not a big deal. You learn that date nights have to get planned weeks out in advance or something, right? And everything that you do as a parent, you die to yourselves.
I hate that I'm more spontaneous. I don't like things out. Like I've been trying to hang out with Anthony. He's like, dude, you gotta let me know ahead. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing 2 weeks from now.
Well, that's exactly it, you know. And I think that when and as far as I'm seeing, Dave Ramsey had a call today, and the woman was like, the new mom, 7-month-old, and was trying to figure out like, how does the dynamic of the marriage get back into gear? And he has a psychologist on named John Delaney, who I'm very fond of. He has a very good series, very good channels, very good talks. And he was like, look, here's the thing. It's never going to be the same. It's just not, because there's a whole different set of information here. You have a kid. So what happens is that your peaks and your valleys, they extrapolate. Your peaks are going to be higher because you have a kid. And they're going to be lower because you have a kid and a wife, right? And so it's a whole, but he heard from when he was going through the same thing, an older man who had children and a marriage and pretty rock steady said this. He was like, you had the Twin Towers and the Twin Towers got destroyed. And now you have to build something stronger from the rubble. And having kids is awesome. And not getting to sleep is awesome. And having all the little fights and having all the little triumphs and failings is awesome. And if you go in with that mentality, that stays with it. So just earlier, I think that modeling a good marriage to our children, I think will be one of the most instrumental things in how they really understand how the faith is lived out and how family is lived out. So like, I love this about my parents. It's so funny. It's ingrained in me. Like in my mind, I've never seen my parents ever kiss in the hallway, but I've always seen them kiss in the kitchen. And what would happen is we'd be going away and my dad would like just come embrace my mom and they'd just kiss a little bit. And I was like,
cool.
Yeah, that's what I said. I told my mom this the other day. I said, you know, that's like for me, that image of you guys, like, you know, you guys have always been mom and dad to me and not like overtly affectionate. It's, you know, in my mind, but then I see this like moment and I'm like, oh, like they're a married couple. Like they're supposed to be like a team effort still. And like, I want that for my kids. Cause like, I don't want to get complacent with Jen for the sake of the kids, you know, like.
No, of course not. Because ultimately your vocation is to be married to this person.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
There has to be affection. There has to be all the things that you had initially and leading into the marriage, hopefully. So yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll have a hard time. I mean, even you, Jenner, and Levin. I love Ashley. I don't
I
think
mean, I
that's
hope so. I was gonna say, well, what kind of, well, here, let me flip this kind of thing, right? So I've said it by temperament. What kind of mom do you think Ashley's gonna be? Because maybe part of your authoritarian temperament, like this, me and Jen,
oh,
like,
like it balances out.
yeah, it balances out, you know?
Yeah,
Like, I do think
I
that
think so.
fathers are, I think a mom's authoritarianism or authority is different than a dad's. Like, my mom was the first line of defense, right? Biggest discipliner. But when dad got involved, like, it was a thing. And I like that a lot.
Yeah,
So
I think Ashley is going to excel. I I've been observing, not on purpose, but only because, with COVID, sometimes she works from home.
yeah,
And because she works with kids, I get to experience that kind of like from a distance, right?
yeah, yeah.
But just the way that she negotiates situations with the kids, and she deals
Mm,
with kids with special needs.
okay.
Um, and also, I've seen the way that she acts with her nephew, who she's really fond of.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've gotten a pretty good idea of the kind of mom that she's going to be, and I think she's going to be pretty great.
Yeah.
And I think you made a really good point. I think it would be a really good balance to maybe my authoritarian side, the way that she's more nurturing. And I think that's more of like a natural. I think that, how do I explain this? I think this is more of a natural feminine quality of a mom
Mm-hmm.
to to be able to nurture a child in that sort of way, and also for the father to come in and form the child. It's like, how do I explain it? It's like fire and ice, right? Like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
you're two different elements, but they're, I don't know how to explain it without sounding kind of silly. But but no, I think with our joint effort, and we have the same mindset, we want to get these kids to heaven. We
Yeah.
want them to be saints. I think that we're going to mesh together. And obviously, with your first kid, I've heard this a lot. You make a lot of mistakes with your first child.
Well, you
And
don't stop making mistakes. It's not like you get it
no,
figured
you
out
don't. You don't. Yeah, absolutely. You don't
right.
stop. But
Yeah. First is definitely the guinea pig.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. And my mom said that. So I I wonder. Well, not wonder. One thing that I like. One of the biggest things that attracted my dad to my mom. And I asked him. I said, and he said how she treated her parents and
Hmm.
how she is with kids. Like my mom was meant to be a mom, you could tell. Like she loves kids. And Jen has like all those qualities. I think that Jen, we have a nephew, she has a nephew too. And I love how Jen interacts with kids. I think it is like seeing that feminine quality bring out is so fantastic. I love it. Like
It's wholesome.
it's so wholesome, and
It's wholesome.
especially, and I feel like for her, especially like coming from that kind of broken household, like something feels so right because it's different from her tumultuous upbringing, like just that nurturing side, unabated. But one thing that I heard from, again, my friend with 4 daughters is he told me this. He said, you need to know your kids and need to know their temperaments. And the reason
Mhm.
why is because that's going to help you best relate to your kids, but also it helps with discipline, it helps with triumphs and everything. So if you have a
Yes,
melancholic
exactly.
child, right, who naturally punishes themselves, right? Like I'm a believer in like I'm a very equality under the law kind of person, right? Like if you break the vase, like you get the same punishment if your sister breaks the vase, right? But like when you have to sit down and actually talk to your kids, right, and try to help
Yeah.
them become adults to get to heaven, right? You're gonna deal with it. Like I'm a sanguine. Like you're gonna deal with the sanguine different. Sanguines. You would sit down, you go like, they put the temperaments out like this, right? Suppose that you need the yard raked, and you have 4 children, and your sanguine kid, you look at them and you say, if you rake the leaves, you'll get a cookie. Sanguine goes, oh my gosh, I love cookies, and like go do it, right? You to the choleric's all about duty. So you say, look, we got to rake these leaves because if we don't rake the leaves, then it's going to be a mess in the lawn and like all this kind of stuff, and squirrels are going to die or something. And this choleric's going to go, okay, my duty is to rake the leaves. I got it. The melancholic, he said the funniest thing. He's like, the melancholic, you just look at the melancholic and look at the yard, look back at the melancholic. And the melancholic will punish themselves and go rake the leaves. And the phlegmatic, which can sometimes be a tricky one to figure out, The phlegmatic might say something like, well, my other 3 siblings are raking the leaves, so it seems like I'm going to rake the leaves. I don't need
I
to.
guess I'll do it.
Yeah, no one else will do it. I guess I'll go do it. Like, whatever.
I want to hang out with my brother.
Um, so I think that's true. And I think that's just as that's true with understanding, like communicating with your wife, like
That's a
knowing
good point.
Jen's temperament has been so helpful because we respond to things way differently. Like Jen needs more time. Jen's choleric melancholic side means that she has a quick impression on things and it takes more of a time for her to kind of process through that thing, right?
Right.
My sanguine side means like I have a quick reaction to things and I'm quick to forget the thing. And when we fight, that is so completely true. Because like I'll be like, well, we could be in the midst of something. And I'm like, I told her, I'm like, Jen, if we were in the midst of something and you look at me and you say, I don't want to fight anymore, or you text me later that you love me, I'll drop the freaking thing. I'm like, okay, we're friends again. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. And I'll be like, I cannot do the same with you. I know that I'm going to give you a day and then you're going to be like, okay, we're friends again or something. So it's true with your kids, I hear.
Sorry, one sec.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Popular.
Ash is like, hey, I need to do this. Is it okay if I make noise?
well, we can.
Yes. Go ahead.
You can wind down a little bit. I think this has been an excellent episode.
Yeah, I think so too. That was a good trad chat.
Yeah, it was very good. Trad chat number 1, which is exciting as sin. Just spitballing. Do you see? So I want to really quickly thank our subscribers because our subscribers have been popping up from all over the place. We have over 350 currently on YouTube, and
we made it.
We're big league. Thank you to everybody who shares the videos, everyone who watch. We have a lot of different kinds of videos that are obviously reaching really, really cool amounts of audience. So, please, if you like, Rudy has really incredible videos on restoring all the sacred items that he has. This missal one is just absolutely incredible. Really great cinematography. Like, and it's Catholic ASMR. So put on your headphones and relax. I'm doing a little series on Catholic masculinity. I think we touched on actually a great amount of it about fatherhood here in this last little section. But the hard truth about
great series.
The hard truth about pornography has over 1,000 views right now.
That's our most famous video.
That's
our most incredible video.
Yeah, and so thank you.
Good one for guys.
Great one for guys.
Girls.
So, yeah. Oh, everyone, and thank you for everyone who's really kind of helped share and spread the videos. I mean, it's incredible hearing from people, hearing from you all about the topics you want to hear about, stories you want to share, see your interactions in the comments. But this is a labor of love for Rudy and I, and we're really, really grateful, I'd say, certainly to God and to the church and to traditional Catholicism, because we do this just for the heck of it, right? We do this because we love the Lord and because we want to get stuff off our chest too,
Yeah.
So if you haven't already, please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. The most important thing you can do for our videos is share. So if you have friends, colleagues, family, coworkers, I don't care, anybody who you think would love any of our many videos that we have, please share these videos. They're always uber helpful. And you can follow us along. Of course, our Twitter's pretty much defunct. Who uses Twitter anyway? That's fake news. But
yeah.
But
I mean, after all the censorship and stuff,
oh my gosh, that's right. Please pray for the election and pray for the president, the real president, the emperor. So, but yeah, thank you so much. You can follow us on Instagram, of course. You can also see pretty much a lot of our longer form videos like this wherever podcasts are. Literally, we are everywhere. You can actually Google now Glad Trad Podcast and we pop up, which is like,
come up.
We're bigly, baby.
We made a brand.
Mm-hmm. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I think it's everything. Rudy, what did you say?
Real quick, I would like to encourage people to read Archbishop Vigano's latest letter.
Oh yes, plug it.
He asks us to pray for the situation that's going on right now. Obviously, some Democrats are celebrating already, and I think they're celebrating a little bit prematurely. There's still a lot of time on the clock. But Archbishop Vigano is asking us to pray, especially in a special way for this situation. And the letter contains all the instructions on how to do that. Also, I would encourage you to look up Father Ripperger's Prayer of Command.
Mhm.
If you type that into Google or whatever you use for search, you type in Ripperger Prayer of Command. There's an article by Father Zuldorf that sort of explains that lady can pray this. It sounds like an exorcism, so I'll give you that warning straight up. And so it might sound a little weird to do that, but lay people are allowed to pray this particular prayer. So first, look at the Archbishop Vigano letter, look at those instructions, and add that to your prayer schedule every day. Hopefully, you're praying every day, and also add that prayer of command by Father Ripperger as well for the outcome of this presidential election. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are at stake, and don't forget, this is a very big culture war,
Mhm.
and it helps to have a president like Donald Trump in office.
Also, he's the emperor. Like, come on now. What are we
He's
doing?
the emperor.
The emperor. I have this.
I would die for this man.
I would. Can I
Yeah.
ever tell you the dream? I really want Donald Trump needs to convert to Catholicism, restore the Holy Roman Empire, and then Archbishop Vigano is the one that crowns him Holy Roman Emperor. So it's Catholic.
That would be so cool, man.
So much for getting off the hard truth of pornography. Anyway. All right, everybody. From us here at the Glad Trad Podcast, God bless you and may I keep you. See you on the next one. Adios.
See you later.